Good Saturday morning to everybody, and welcome to HyperFit MD radio show, where age management always takes center stage. Along with Dr. Charles and Francesca Guglin, I'm Gary Byron. Well, good morning there, my friends.
How's it going?
Well, it's another week.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm trying to hang in there over here. You know, it's day to day for me. How about you?
Yeah, it is. It's pretty much day to day. Yeah, because we go to work. You know, we're all the same. We're all the same. We get up. We go to work, and we put the widget in the thing, and then we come home, and that's the kind of thing. So we're doing fine.
Well, you've been home from Malta for a little over a week now. Are you
right.
back to adjusted to our time now? Okay.
We're adjusted and did the mountain of work that needed to be done while we were gone.
Oh, I know. It's always a double-edged sword when you go away. It's nice, you're away, and then you come
right.
back. You've got a mountain of paperwork or emails to get back, phone calls to return, and
right.
Then you sit there and go, was it even worth it?
Yeah.
And this is why people take their work with them on vacation, but and then you can't win for losing. And it's like, what kind of a vacation is this? How come you're taking your work?
Right.
You were never really on vacation. You should be with your family. Oh, I've heard it all.
Yeah. With the advent of technology, you can take your work with you. We were calling patients. We were just timing it for 6 hours, because we were 6 hours ahead. So the golden, 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So the phone calls started coming about 9 o'clock. So every single day while we were there, we had up until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon to do the business that we went there to do, because this was a family business trip. This was not really a vacation. To do the stuff that we had to do, and then the phone calls kind of started and that sort of thing. So technology makes it so it's hard to take a vacation.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's topic, how was the flight with COVID restrictions over in Malta? Was it tight? Was it strict?
In Malta, they're really strict when you arrive about your health records. They want to see your vaccination cards. They want to see that you've had a PCR test. They don't you don't go through passport control. That's basically, so they have a really strict, they're really controlling people coming in, and everyone has to be vaccinated. Otherwise, you have to quarantine for 14 days. Leaving Malta, you have to have a PCR test. So every plane we boarded, that was the requirement, to see a PCR test that was done in the last 72 hours.
It cost us $130 a pop for the PCR test too. So
euros.
Euros. Yeah, so that's
the PCR test is just
it's a COVID test, but not the rapid one. It's
not the swab up your nose.
Yeah, the swab.
Yeah.
The swab up your nose.
Why? What's the other one?
There's a rapid one
that's more rapid than that.
Oh yeah.
What is that?
You get it instantly.
The rapid results. Oh,
right,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought today's topic is not only an interesting topic, it's covers a wide array
sure
of issues here.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's body analysis,
mm-hmm.
which I guess we can go in many different directions with this.
Absolutely.
So let's start with what exactly body analysis is, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, you come into the office, we strip you naked, we say, nice body. or not. No. Done with that. So any other questions?
Wow, that was fast.
No, it's really, they call it body comp to a certain degree because there is body comp involved, and we'll talk about that in a second. But from our standpoint, we're talking about, let's set blood work aside because we've already talked about that. That's a whole nother subject. What we're talking about really is measuring not only body composition, but physiological parameters that when you go through this testing, you understand a lot more about yourself, where you are from a fitness standpoint, so on and so forth.
Like BMI, like body mass index, things like that?
Yeah, but that's, BMI is a worthless number, but like that, like that. Sure. So what's really about, just like with the blood work that we do in our practice, it's about finding out where you are today and giving you something and telling you what it is you need to work on, whether it's you're carrying too much belly fat, whether or not you're carrying whether you're carrying a stupid amount of muscle, which we see a lot of bodybuilders in our practice, and some of these guys are just literally carrying a stupid amount of muscle. They're tearing their joints up.
You can't tell them that, though.
Well, I do. No, are you kidding me? I'm right there. I'm right in their face about it because these guys are ruining their joints building muscle. physiology. Where do you sit in the fitness realm? Okay, in terms of comparison to other dudes your age. Okay, are you a fit person? Do you need to work on your fitness level? And we'll define that later on in the conversation. It runs the whole gamut from what you look like from the outside to what's going on the inside.
What about a DEXA scan? What is that?
We have one side of our practice. One side of our practice is all about this kind of analysis, and what we use what's called the Live Lean company. It's a franchise that we have in our practice, Live Lean.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah. They've been here before.
Yeah, Live Lean RX. They put these machines in our practice, and we use them on our patients. But also, Live Lean is also running a business inside our practice as well. A DEXA scan was originally every hospital has a DEXA scan to measure bone mineral density. Okay, osteopenia, osteoporosis, that kind of thing. But the DEXA scan that we have goes a lot deeper than that.
It's a report card, basically.
Yeah, it's an X-ray machine.
Okay.
It is an X-ray machine, a tiny little bit of X-rays, about less than 1/10 of what you would be exposed to for, let's say, a mammogram. One guy in a lecture once said it's about the much radiation as you would get flying in an airplane from New York to Chicago. Very little bit of X-ray. And you take all your metal stuff off, and you lie down on this table, and it scans you. It takes depends on how big you are.
6 to 11 minutes.
Yeah, 6 to 11 minutes. The larger you are, the longer it takes. So that's what it is. It's an X-ray machine, and it tells us.
I was going to say, what do I learn from it?
Yeah. It tells us. It tells us your bone mineral density, hips and spine, which is typically the way it's done in a hospital. And scores your bone mineral density against other people your age, gender and age. It tells us your lean body mass, which is the muscle mass along with solid organs, liver, spleen, that sort of thing, and both in pounds and in terms of percentages. By the way, the margin of error here is 2%. It's far and away the gold standard for all the things we're about to talk about here. And then it tells us your body fat percent and fat distribution, which is critical to our side of the practice because it breaks up your fat into two different categories. Gynoid fat, which it's a misnomer, but it's basically the fat that's around your hips and your butt, the kind of fat that's outside, right underneath your skin. That's not really metabolically active, that fat. It's really cosmetically an issue, okay?
It's the fat that people want to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And belly fat. The fat, or what's also known as visceral adipose tissue or android fat. And that is the fat that's inside your belly that encases the visceral organs in your abdomen because this fat is extremely metabolically active. It's principal cause of systemic inflammation. It's one of the causes of what's known as metabolic syndrome, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, so on and so forth. Belly fat is killing Americans. And we can tell you in cubic inches and ounce for ounce how much belly fat you're carrying. And it's an amazing way to follow. I tell patients, throw your scale away or stick it in a closet somewhere. Just forget the scale. If you are in fat loss mode, let's say, or you're just trying to get healthy, the way to follow yourself is to follow on the DEXA scale because it will tell you, classic example, doc, I get these phone calls all the time. I've been on this program for a month and a half and I haven't lost any weight. I say, and then I swear, I say, use a couple of words and then I say, stop, get off the scale. What do we talk about? The scale tells you nothing. We get them on the DEXA scanner and it shows that they've lost 8 pounds of fat and they've gained 5.5 pounds of muscle, okay? So that's the difference. When you can track things that way, you can track your progress in a much more definitive way, and it's extremely motivating.
Oh, well, yeah,
it's extremely motivating.
The way you just explained it. Well, I mean, you're going to take somebody who's disappointed and, that it's not working into somebody who's just, jubilant, going, oh, I did lose a lot of fat.
Yeah.
And I've always heard that muscle weighs more than fat anyways, right?
Definitely, yeah.
It gives you symmetry too. It gives you symmetry, so especially for bodybuilders, or you're at the gym and if you're even on your arms and your legs, it kind of gives you that report too.
Sure.
It breaks up to the right and left in all those categories.
What does RMR refer to?
RMR. You know what? Let me back up a little bit because no, we'll talk about this later. We'll have another whole talk about bone mineral density some other time because that takes more than a half an hour. RMR stands for resting metabolic rate. Resting metabolic rate is basically how many calories you burn sitting in that chair for 24 hours, okay? The number of calories that you burn just running your body, okay? Your brain, your kidneys, your lungs, so on and so forth. That's your resting metabolic rate.
I remember one time, this must probably months ago, we talked about this vaguely or briefly, and I was amazed that you can just sit in a chair and burn calories. I think a lot of kids, if there's any kids listening to this, they've got an argument with their parents, about as far as going outside and running around and oh, you're not going to burn any calories sitting there watching TV. Of course, watching TV usually comes hand in hand with a bowl of chips, right?
Exactly,
So
right,
that's why they're not really burning calories.
Yeah.
And it's based on the exercise that you do on a regular basis. It's based on your metabolism. It's based on the food that you eat daily, because you can slow your metabolism down by starving yourself.
Yes.
So it all works together.
Yeah.
Going back to RMR and what it refers to, how is it done?
Basically, you need to be fasting for it. So typically, when people come into the office for their blood work, they've been fasting for their blood work, and so if they want an RMR, we'll do it at the same time. You can have water, but definitely no caffeine, no stimulants at all.
And no exercise for 24 hours
Before you go.
before you go.
Yeah. You come in, you sit in a chair, we put a clothespin on your nose, and you breathe into a tube it takes about 15 minutes altogether. And you're literally just breathing into a tube, and what's happening is what's being measured is your carbon dioxide output, which carbon dioxide is a byproduct of metabolism. And there's a whole algorithm that the computer goes through, and it gives us your RMR, which is basically measured in calories. It's measured in calories. So go ahead.
It's a great report to get, because if you are wanting to maintain your weight, it will tell you how many calories you should eat that day. If you're looking to lose weight, it will basically you eliminate 500 calories from that total. So it's a great tool to help you lose weight.
Yeah, and helps. The whole exercise thing plays a role here because we've talked about high intensity interval training. One of the concepts of high intensity interval training, a guy gets on a treadmill. We've all been to the gym, okay? We see that guy in the treadmill, and he's got a Time magazine unfolded in front of him, and he's walking on the treadmill. He's actually burning calories at a slow rate. He's burning calories while he's on that treadmill. By the time he gets out of the shower, though, his metabolic rate is back down to his resting metabolic rate. If you engage in high-intensity interval training, which is another whole subject, high-intensity interval training, Orange Theory, CrossFit, a lot of different methods of exercising are based on the concept of high-intensity interval training, which, and we're going to talk about this when we talk about VO2 max, is about getting your heart rate, exercising past the point of anaerobic metabolism, which if you engage in high-intensity interval training, you can jack that resting metabolic rate rather than just that hour that you're on the treadmill. You can jack it for a good 36 hours. So if you go through a good high-intensity interval training program, you really only need to do that training every other day or so. If your sole concern is fat loss, you really only need to do that every other day or so, and then on the off days, do what you like. Play tennis, go rollerblading or whatever, because you are really burning calories for a prolonged period of time after a workout like that.
Is there a certain workout or a certain exercise regimen that works best hand in hand with it?
It's really all about your what's called your anaerobic threshold. And again, we'll talk about this when we talk about VO2 max. Your anaerobic threshold is literally the heart rate at which you go from functioning aerobically, in other words, using oxygen, okay, to run your muscles, to anaerobic metabolism. Basically, your muscles are running on, they're metabolizing themselves to run. And if you can get your heart rate past that anaerobic threshold for, let's say, a minute several times during a 30-minute workout, and it's hard to maintain that for a minute, what you're doing then is you're increasing that resting metabolic rate, and the resting metabolic rate stays there increased for a number of hours after you're done with that workout. So that's really the concept. A classic example is the Tour de France riders, okay? Those guys are working at their anaerobic threshold all day long. They're what we call, they're basically a heart-lung prep, those guys. All they are is legs and lungs.
I'm a little confused, though. What do you learn from it?
You learn where, like what Francesca was saying, if you're interested in losing fat, you want to know what your resting metabolic rate is, so that if you're counting calories, you want to be to a certain level in caloric deficit to burn fat. If you're in weight gain mode, you want to be eating excess calories, more calories. If you're trying to gain muscle mass, you need to work out and eat more calories. You cannot work in a caloric deficit and build muscle mass. So there's a lot of different things that work into this equation, but knowing that number, that resting metabolic rate, is very helpful.
Would a trainer tell me this, though?
Not unless you.
I'm sorry.
Not unless you have that test.
Yeah.
I mean, they can tell you roughly, but this will give you an accurate.
Yeah, there's different ways of fudging it. There's different,
Yeah.
your weight, your age, your weight, blah blah blah.
So everything comes into your age, your weight, your height, your
Your habits, your exercise habits, your eating habits.
Yeah,
Good point.
yeah.
Folks, you are listening to HyperFit MD radio show, where age management is always front and center. Along with Dr. Charles and Francesca Guglin, I'm Gary Byron. They are located at 88 Noble Avenue, Suite 105 down in Milford. You can check them out online at hyperfitmd.com. And write this phone number down, 203-890-9777. And I'll repeat that number in their contact information towards the end of the show. How about a VO2 max study? What is a VO2 max study?
If you've seen images of an athlete, like in a training center, he's running on a treadmill and he's got a mask on his face and he's got EKG leads on him. Have you seen images
I
like
thought that was just COVID precautions or something.
No, what they're having,
the mask on his face.
No, they're having what he or she is having done is a VO2 max study, and it's a principal part of training. At training at high levels, like Olympic athletes are having their VO2 max studies done on a routine basis because they're in a very scientific way trying to improve their fitness. And so it's sort of like a stress test because you start at a very low rate. It can be done on a bicycle or on a treadmill. For the most part in our practice, we use a treadmill. Start at a very low rate, and then over a period of 8 to 10 minutes, a trained athlete will take longer. A period of 8 to 10 minutes, we're increasing the height of the treadmill, and we're increasing the speed with which you're walking/running on the treadmill. And once we obtain the data that we're looking for, then we cool you down and you're done. But typically it takes, for the most part, about 8 to 12 minutes, somewhere in that range. It's not fun. It's not a fun test.
I was going to say, it
But
doesn't
you
sound.
get a lot of. I mean,
We get a lot of information from it. Yeah, it's very useful information.
And how is it done again? I mean, how?
You're hooked up to a breather.
So you're hooked up to the breather.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're
You
wearing a
have-
completely occlusive mask.
Right, but is
Your heart rate
that
is
mask,
monitored.
is that then hooked up to something else?
Yeah.
Yes,
To the
okay.
machine, and you have a heart monitor on too.
Yeah. It's hooked up to a computer.
It sounds really uncomfortable. How are you able to run at your maximum capacity?
10 minutes.
Okay. All right. So how specifically then is it done?
That's the way it's done. Basically, what we get from it, you get on the treadmill. Francesca fits you with the mask. The mask is occlusive. That is a little bit claustrophobic. It takes some getting used to. And the typical heart rate monitor, the same one you would wear if you were at home and with your Fitbit or whatever.
Right,
okay. Right. And we get you going. You're walking at first, and what she's doing is she's asking. There's a series of hand signals. 1 is I'm doing fine. 2 is I can definitely do more. 3 is I can do more. 4 is I have like 1 minute left, and 5 is get me off this thing. I'm about to die. And while this is happening, she's slowly increasing the incline on the treadmill and slowly increasing the rate at which you're walking and eventually you're running on this treadmill. And we are watching a series of graphs on the computer that tell us how much oxygen you're consuming, how much oxygen per kilogram you're consuming, how much carbon dioxide you are exhaling, how much carbon dioxide per kilogram you're exhaling. And we watch these graphs until, so the oxygen, you're obviously as you're exercising more, you're consuming more and more oxygen, okay? But you're also creating more and more carbon dioxide because you're using your muscles. So we watch this graph very carefully, and when the carbon dioxide, the VCO2, crosses over with the VO2, that's your VO2 max, okay? That is the point at which you have now started functioning anaerobically. You're no longer using inhaled oxygen to make your muscles function. That is your anaerobic threshold. And that's a critical piece of information that the VO2 max study tells us, because you want to walk out of there knowing what your anaerobic threshold is, because that is what your target is when you're doing high-intensity interval training. But it also tells us a lot of other things. It tells us your lung function. If you're a heavy smoker and you're lying about it, I can tell right off the bat before you even get off the treadmill. It tells us your lung function. It tells us what your overall fitness level is compared to, in your particular case, other 40-ish white dudes, okay? Yeah. I'm giving you a little bit there.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Because that's another thing you want to know is what your fitness level is, and it compares you to, and it can tell you that you're not very fit, that you're about average for your age, and it's a continuum. It's not broken up into blocks, but it can tell you how you compare to other very fit people. It can tell you what your fitness level is.
But you can improve. It's a great baseline. You can improve by doing high intensity interval training.
All right.
It also looks at your cardiac system, right?
It tells us what your cardiac output is under stress, which is a calculated number.
So it's a stress test, or a glorified.
It is like a stress test, but we're getting completely different information from it than you are during a stress test. When you do a stress test, they're watching your EKG very carefully, and they're looking for electrocardiogram changes while you're exercising to see whether or not your heart is sustaining some level of ischemic damage. In other words, if your heart is not getting enough oxygen during a stress test, the EKG tells that right away. So it's like a stress test, but you're looking for a completely different set of data than you are in a stress test. Okay. So it's very helpful because as we talked about before in terms of that resting metabolic rate, if you know what your anaerobic threshold is, and then you go off to a place like Orange Theory, okay, which is always when you're doing that with a heart rate monitor, or you go off to a place like CrossFit, or you are the kind of person who's disciplined enough to go to a gym and work past your anaerobic threshold on your own, which again is not an easy thing. You can measure that heart rate. Let's say your anaerobic threshold is a heart rate of 155. Okay, you're on that treadmill, and you get on that treadmill. You warm up. You walk for 5 minutes or so. Okay, you get yourself nice and warm. Get your muscles nice and warm. Jack up that treadmill, and you're running. You're monitoring your heart rate. You get your heart rate up to 155, and you want to keep it there for a period of time. Typically, I tell people a minute. A well-trained athlete can keep it there for 2, 3, 4 minutes at a time, which is not fun. It's not easy. Then you've kept it there for a minute and a half or so. Put the treadmill down. You want to you want to continue to jog, but instead of running, you want to jog. Let your heart rate come down a little bit. Okay, then do it again. Jack it up again. Keep it there for a minute.
Do? It sounds like it's
It's really good for you. Yeah, it's really good for you.
The healthiest way to exercise.
Yeah, put it this way.
Walk, run.
No, run, jog.
Jog.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And what I tell people is that you never, if you're doing it right, you never have to do cardio for more than half an hour. Because if you're doing this, if you complete that cycle 4 or 5 times in a 1/2 hour workout, a cardio workout, okay, you jack your resting metabolic rate for a good 36 hours. So there's no point in doing it any further. You're just beating up your joints. Unless you really love doing something like cycling and that kind of thing. People go out and cycle 50 miles. I mean, they're basically, to my mind, they're basically doing it to stay away from their wife and kids for 4 hours. But there's a lot, because you can only see so much scenery while you're doing that. But
Do you ever run so hard, so fast for so long that it feels like your heart is going to burst right out of your?
Sure.
That can't be good for you.
Well,
What's that? It is?
yeah, sure. I mean, that's the way it feels when you're running past your anaerobic threshold. That's kind of the way it feels.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you
what it
feel-
reminded. Which is
yeah.
what you're describing. It's what it reminds me of because I've been that. You know,
Yeah.
because I used to run 6 days a week. I don't do that anymore because my schedule, quite frankly, has gotten busier than and it's my time has shifted. But I do run a few times, 2 to 3 times a week now. Not like I used to. 6 days. It's cut in half. And there were days that I just remember it felt like my heart was going to just jump right out of my skin. It was just, and I'm thinking I'm going to have a heart attack. It's going to go crazy. But a heart attack, whereas a heart attack would be bad, this is actually good. It just felt weird. That's all. Thought I'd share that with you, Doc.
Well, to be quite honest, there's certain patients in our practice that we don't do VO2 max studies on because we feel it's a risk. Okay.
I guess there's a lot to be learned from this.
Yeah.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Pushing somebody to that threshold can be risky, and there are many patients in our practice that we wouldn't do a VO2 max study on because they're just not in the kind of shape where they should be taking that risk. So it's a very good question. It's a very good question.
And by the way, I never find volunteers to practice on.
I could understand why. Maybe you could sign me up, though. I could use
Whatever we need to calibrate the machine.
Folks, you've been listening to HyperFit MD radio show where age management is always front and center. Check them out online, hyperfitmd.com. Once again, hyperfitmd.com. And if you're in the Milford area, or even if you're not, it's a good reason to head down there. Check them out at 88 Noble Avenue, Suite 105 in Milford. You may also have a question that you would like to have Dr. Guglin answer on these very airwaves. Hey, who knows? Maybe as soon as next Saturday, you can certainly email him at cguglinmd. That's CGUGLINMD at hyperfitmdamc.com. And again, his phone number, you want to make that appointment, is 203-890-9777. Once again, write it down. 203, area code 203-890-9777. For Dr. Charles and Francesca Guglin, I'm Gary Byron. Until next time, have a good one, everybody. So long.